It's the Off-Grid Prep Family Podcast.
Episode 13, the first 300 things to prep, and Greywater systems.
Two fun topics.
Very fun. We spent a lot of time developing and working on Greywater systems.
We have, and ours has kind of simplified and streamlined over the years, and we think it works pretty well now.
It does. It works really well.
It feeds us.
It's actually still kind of experimental.
I'm happy with where it's at, though.
Yeah. Well, we have two Greywater systems right now. One for each wing of the house.
And we can choose to put one or both into the garden or the orchard or wherever as needed.
Yeah.
Water is a precious resource, and whether you're getting it from a well or the sky or just the tap with your city, you don't want to waste it.
No, and reclaiming or recycling the water when you're done with it, it's a whole thing, because it's still, unless it's black water, which you really just have to put into a septic system. Gray water is still really valuable for your garden.
Yeah. One of the things, we can go into this more in a couple of minutes, but one of the things I think we've found that's been most valuable is just you have to keep it moving. It can't sit for too long.
Oh, that's a good point. I hadn't really thought about that, but yeah.
It would get really skeezy.
Yeah.
You had to keep it moving, keep it flowing, and then put it onto your garden or your lawn or wherever it needs to go as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
As far as products, we just use the most natural things we can find with nothing that you wouldn't want to eat. Mm-hmm. Don't be putting bleach down it, or, at least not in very large quantities. We use some sort of more natural dishwasher soaps, and that Nellie's laundry soda seems to do fine with the plants. And a little bit of soap, even a little bit of Blue Dawn, is not going to kill your plants, because that's actually something that you can use to get rid of aphids and stuff on your vegetables.
Right, yeah.
In desperate situations, you can use Blue Dawn or even insecticidal soap, so you don't have to worry about putting that down the drain.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to talk for a minute and a half about how we set it up, and then we can go into more later?
Sure. It started in the cottage. We, as I mentioned, did the bucket for the toilet, and all of our drains, the shower and the kitchen sink, which is all we had in the cottage. I decided that I didn't want them just spilling on the ground, and I knew a little bit, enough about septic technology, so to speak, to know that they collected the solids in some kind of a bucket or a vessel or a bin or something. So that's kind of where it started.
Yeah, and then we had our water storage in a greenhouse that was attached to the south side of that little A-frame, and then we ran our gray water into that A-frame, or into the greenhouse, and it watered our tomatoes.
We did. We put it in a bin, and then there was no pumping or anything. It just had a slightly higher outlet on the bin, and that the solids settled, and the pipe,
it ran
for the effluent or whatever they call it. It ran through a drain pipe, like a percolating drain pipe, almost like a weeping tile, through the garden bed. And of course, the plants in the first 10 feet of the garden bed got more water, but it all
dissipated.
It did dissipate. Yeah,
those were the best tomatoes, frankly, we've ever grown.
They were incredible. My
garden's spitting out 20-pound tomatoes. My teeth have never been whiter. Okay, our first sponsor of the day today is EMP Shield. Thank you, EMP Shield. Again, they have devices that will protect anything you plug into them from an EMP, a coronal mass ejection, or a lightning strike. And they have models for your car, your generator, or your whole house. And if you use the code OGPF, you can get $50 off any unit. Go to our friends and affiliates page if you want the link. So after we were done in the cottage, how is our full-scale whole house Greywater system different, or is it basically the same?
No, it's basically the same. It's not an evolving science. It's really simple.
One thing that's different is there's a pump, because it has to pump it all the way to the garden.
Well, that's our own addition. So there's
if you
lots
had
of
gardens like right up next to your house, you wouldn't need one.
yeah. There's lots of great on Wikipedia or WikiHow. WikiHow, that's where I found it. WikiHow and Instructables. There are lots of great systems or designs involving rain barrels, but the basic principles are the same. You put a vessel in the ground, or whatever, at the lowest point.
Yeah, like a big Rubbermaid tote.
A big tote, or a rain barrel, or anything, really. And the whole purpose of that vessel is for sediment and solids to collect.
Right.
Right? And then you put your first pipe, your inlet pipe, into the vessel at, let's say, 9/10 of the way up. Then what you do is you have an outlet pipe at 8/10 of the way up.
Okay.
So it's slightly lower.
Yeah.
So your inlet pipe is always pouring into this thing. And then your solids settle.
Yeah.
And then your outlet pipe is always draining off overflow. So mostly liquid.
Okay.
Well,
And so that's if you don't need to pump at a distance. Or really, I guess mostly what our pump is for is the fact that our garden's gigantic. And it wouldn't be, if it's not pressurized, it wouldn't be as even.
No, it wouldn't. It wouldn't.
Yeah.
So ours eventually became a very complex system. So what I've described is, and I talked about this I think in the last episode, is a very rudimentary septic system. People use this exact same technique for Blackwater and Greywater.
Yeah.
And eventually your sediment builds up, your tank fills up, and you call the honey wagon, the guy with the trash pump,
Yeah.
and he comes and pumps all the sludge out and takes it to the dump, or honestly probably dumped it in the
Yes,
ocean.
He dumps it somewhere, yeah.
And then your tank's empty again and your system works. So that's it. That's the whole, even modern septic systems,
Yeah.
that's how they work.
And so if you're doing a Greywater system off grid, we would recommend that you use something that you can take the lid off and pressure wash it out yourself.
Yeah, so what I do is every 2 weeks, garbage day, set my
Yeah.
calendar. I have a little bin. It's about a 60-liter bin in the ground outside the kitchen. And I have inside of it, I actually had to really work at this for a long time. I wanted to filter solids and feed it to the chickens. I didn't want solids collecting, and I didn't
And
want
you didn't
solids
want them going
to
through the pump.
Well, I
Yeah.
did that the first month, and it plugged all the holes. I had to change out all the pipes because they all filled with solids. So what I did is I took a Home Depot 5-gallon pail, and I cut a bunch of like 2-inch wide slots vertically in the side of it, and then I stapled on bug screen.
So it's like a filter bucket.
So it's a filter. So what happens is the outlet from our kitchen dumps into this bucket, and the solids stay in the bucket, and anything smaller than bug screen holes leaches out into the Greywater bin, and which is more than enough for the pump. The holes in the pipes in the garden are bigger.
Okay.
So then you end up with this bucket that accumulates solids, but you just take it out and you dump it to the chickens every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
As for the day-to-day running of the pump, it works. It's just a sump pump.
Right.
It's got an automatic float in it. And so when the bin fills to whatever the factory determined point of the float, the pump engages and pumps out the bin until the float shuts off. And when that pump goes, some pumps have a surprisingly effective push force on them. Like it'll pump for, I bet I could pump out of the creek with that thing.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I think they call it hydraulic lift.
Okay.
Anyway, so the pump, our garden is actually downhill from our Greywater system, so it's easy for the pump.
Yeah.
And it feeds into a trunk line.
What's the trunk line made out of?
It's 1 inch, they use it in water wells.
What would you ask for if you had to go to the hardware store?
1 inch black poly, I guess. Poly B, something like that. It's
Okay.
black. It's usually got a colored stripe on it.
Okay.
Fun fact.
It's pretty cheap.
The color of the stripe denotes the thickness of the wall of the pipe. There's different thicknesses.
And does it need to be thick, or can you get the thin
No,
one?
you can get the thinnest one.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because there's no pressure.
Yeah. And so the main line is this black poly.
Yeah.
And then off of that line, we ran a bunch of...
So there's a few fittings involved. Really, to do it right, you have to get gray PVC fittings from Home Depot or Lowe's or whatever. And you have to step it down with a few fittings to... I used 1/2 inch pecs.
Right.
Now, you could still use poly, like the black poly water well line, but it does get expensive.
Yeah.
So 1/2-inch PEX or 3/4-inch PEX is dirt cheap.
So for like basically every row in the garden, it's just got this line of PEX running down
That's
it.
right.
And then we just poked little holes in it with a drill.
That's it. We'd take I think it was smaller than an 1/8-inch bit.
Mm-hmm.
We had to actually do really small holes.
Yeah.
And
it just goes psh,
it just sprays out.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of little fountains that come out.
And,
it's
and
really
sometimes
cool.
one hole will get plugged.
Yeah.
And you'll end up with a dry spot in your garden, and you just go around and you poke it. And if you're out there with your gardening shears, you poke it with your gardening shears.
You use your shears. It totally works.
Yeah.
The spray's a little chaotic, but it's not a big deal. So that's, in a nutshell, that's how the system is designed. Is with I found the filter bucket was paramount.
Mm-hmm.
I tried gluing the screens on.
Yeah.
With a few different types of glue, some of which I use on my roof that has been up there for years and is waterproof.
Mm-hmm.
But when it's submerged, it totally breaks down.
I think also like the oils and grease and stuff from your kitchen and cooking
Right.
probably breaks down glues.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah.
There is a lot of oil. There's a lot of floating kind of...
Yeah, and we try to be very careful about what we put down, but still...
You got to live your life.
We
Like,
got
you gotta
kids
have a
using
normal,
the dishwasher. Sometimes
Yeah.
they don't rinse stuff. Sometimes stuff gets put down. And it's fine, and honestly, I think the garden grows better for it.
Yeah. Oh, it does. It's incredible.
Yeah.
We noticed the difference the first year right away.
Mm-hmm. And it's not just the water, it's like the stuff that's in it.
As far as the chemicals go, it does definitely... Like, it doesn't stink.
Yeah. It has a slight compost smell.
Yeah, when you
it
clean it
runs.
out. Yeah. So I didn't install traps in my Greywater plumbing.
Because we knew we were doing Greywater, and we wanted to keep it moving.
We knew we had to keep it moving.
Yeah.
You could install traps. That's one of the things that I can't change now because, for instance,
But we had read all over that you shouldn't have traps if you're doing
We did,
Greywater, so we didn't. And it's fine, and it doesn't smell, and we don't get like snakes coming up our drains or anything.
No.
But if I had to do it over again, I wouldn't have listened to that advice. I would have just put in traps.
Just put in traps, just like normal plumbing. It's not a big deal. The clean out method, we definitely don't put bleach down our drains. However, when I clean it out, I do bleach it. Like I put maybe, I'm going to say a cup in total, like a cup of bleach in the bin itself. That seems to, I missed that once or twice during my clean outs, and the bin itself started to smell.
Okay.
So I figured out really quickly that just a small amount of bleach, I'm sure you could use something else, a strong cleaner. It's just what I had on hand because of the pool.
You could probably use peroxide because that wouldn't kill your plants.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem to affect our plants.
Because you can peroxide seedlings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
But that's expensive. And
It
it's
is.
hard to get things on an island, and sometimes you just use what you got.
Even just the basics.
Yeah.
You know, when normal life requires certain things, you need soap. We've talked about the many appliances we need.
Yeah, but we don't use like... We try to be pretty clean about what soaps we buy anyways, because you're putting it on your skin, but we don't use like a specialty, organic, homeopathy, handmade soap.
No, we tried soap nuts.
No. Soap nuts we have used, and we have used many times over and over, and every time eventually we have to throw our clothes out.
We do. It just builds up. It
just doesn't get clean. If you're living on a farm and you got a bunch of kids and chicken poop and who knows what.
Yeah.
I don't know. Eventually your clothes just look dirty.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to add about Greywater?
No, I think I covered it. I think the size of the tank doesn't really matter.
The smaller the better, because then it's pumping out more often.
Well, and it's easier to clean. Yeah, and that goes back to how you opened with keeping the water moving. Yeah.
Yeah, and really, like, ours is sort of sized so that it runs at least once a day, sometimes twice. It's probably every 2 showers that it goes.
Yeah, that's about right.
Or like a shower and a dishwasher will make it run, sort of.
It's a 60-liter tank, but it really, with the sump float, it maybe only fills up halfway.
Yeah. And it seems to be about the right amount for our big garden. So
it does, yeah.
It
takes a couple minutes to empty itself out into the garden. It works really well.
And if you're in the garden and you're worried about getting hit with Greywater, you hear the air coming out of the lines first.
Yes.
First you're in the garden and you're like, what is that sound? And it's like
a snake?
But it's all around you.
Yeah.
And then it clicks and you run out of that garden before you get soaked with somebody else's shower water.
Yeah.
Baby bath water. Okay, so moving on, we're talking about the first 300 things to prep, which is a free list that you can get from our website. If you go to offgridprepfamily.com, we will send it to you, and it just helps you kind of reduce that decision fatigue and move on with your life.
Yeah.
Just do something, just get the things.
Yeah, it's great.
It's generic. If you're gluten-free, don't buy flour. Get gluten-free flour. If you don't like beans, buy lentils, buy something else. But at least it's a starting point.
Mm-hmm.
And what we really like to encourage is not just loading up on the thing that you think is fun or the thing that's easy. You want to prep the 4 main areas evenly, if that makes sense. So the 4 main areas: water, if you want to be crass, beans, bullets, and Band-Aids. So water, food, self-defense and security, first aid.
Yeah,
and so
that is the right order.
We prep those, a little bit, each of those 4 layers, over and over and over again, until you have mountains of all 4. But it's very easy, especially for like if you're a gun guy or you're really into the freeze-dried food, it's really easy to let one of those mountains get really big while you're ignoring the others. And so you think you're prepped for 6 months, but you're only prepped for 6 months in freeze-dried broccoli.
You know what I just thought of?
Yes.
You know how I talk about how there's a kind of a macro narrative to everything? Like, people do things out of impulse, but it's because of certain factors that they aren't aware of happening in the world. It's like they're following a program, right?
Yes.
I can't help but think at this point right now that... Remember the hoarding thing?
Yeah.
There's the show Hoarders.
Yeah. Do you think they were doing that?
I think they were instinctively doing that.
They knew that this was coming.
Well, part of them knew. Like, there's a part of all of us that's extremely wise that few of us have a chance to tap into. Like your great aunt.
Yeah, her basement was full.
But it was full of garbage because she had no direction.
Yeah.
I think that's what it's
you gotta have the direction.
Yeah.
Okay, quick break for Thrive Life freeze-dried foods.
Yes.
Do you want to talk about Thrive Life today?
Yeah, they're great. Thrive Life. We did actually try a couple other brands of freeze-dried food.
Yeah, when we were first starting out, you gotta try them all. And it was just... If you're not used to eating a lot of salt and MSG, it can be really upsetting to your stomach.
It was.
And if you're feeding more than a couple of people, it is not cost-effective to use those like packages of meals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't like the prepackaged thing. Like, there were weird sauces.
Here's your breakfast. It's 18 things scrambled together that all should have been cooked to different amounts, but we're going to cook them all the same.
With Thrive Life, it was just a can of onions and a can of beef.
And so you just use what you need.
Yeah.
It also,
you can use it in any recipe.
It reduces a lot of waste because instead of chopping an entire bell pepper and having half of it sit in your fridge for 3 days, you just take out 3 tablespoons of bell pepper and you put the can away.
Yeah. And it works.
Especially for like things you don't use a lot of, like refried beans.
Yeah.
Those are awesome.
They must have their own nuclear reactor.
I don't know how they do it. Nuclear.
Because we've done research and we've talked about this. Freeze dryers, or at least residential small scale freeze dryers, are so unbelievably wasteful in their power consumption.
Yeah.
I don't know how they do it, but they do it. And that's what counts.
Let's
and it's affordable. And it's, exactly. So you can get a 15% discount on your first order at offgridprepfamily.com /friends.
All right. So continuing on the 4 layers, the 4 areas to prep: water, beans, bullets, Band-Aids. If you don't have any plan, you're going to end up being
a hoarder, really, if you just
you're just going to grab stuff and you'll be like, that looks good, that looks good, that looks good, but you won't have your like basics covered. So what we're hoping to help you do is think about things really pragmatically, just get as much stuff put away as you can in a helpful method. Band-Aids, for example, is a category that I find it really boring. And so it's easy to overlook. Dry. And it's easy to not keep things stocked because it's like, I don't want to spend $4.50 on Band-Aids. Have you seen how much Band-Aids cost these days?
Well, everything.
Like, not everything, but Band-Aids. Not the sticker ones, but like the actual fabric ones that actually work.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't find it fun. And so it can be tempting for me to just not.
Yeah.
And then we end up we don't even know when a bottle of Tylenol all of a sudden. And it's just a mess. So, as far as food, if we're going to talk about basics, I'm talking about water, carbs, fat, protein, and some basic toiletries.
Yes. Very basic.
Yeah, you're not going to move on to fruits and nuts and chocolate chips if you haven't stored a year's worth of oil and flour and oats and rice and beans and canned tomatoes.
Don't talk about vitamins. Don't talk about supplements. None of that.
Yeah, you're buying spam.
Yeah.
The great thing is that most of those items, the real basics, have not gone up as much as the other things.
I've been really surprised.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to say them now because
they've gone up.
They have gone up,
but not as
much
as the fun foods I have noticed have gone up. Flour's gone up, but it's still not an expensive food. If you don't normally eat flour, you should still store flour unless you're actually like gluten intolerant.
If you disagree, you can find a different podcast. It's okay. I understand.
This isn't the place to be fancy.
This isn't the place to be listening.
So I would say you need to make a plan and just stick to it. And it's not the time to get distracted with beekeeping. If you know that it's only going to cost you $40 to buy a year's worth of sugar.
Sick reference. Yeah. No, really, because how many of those...
I would love to do beekeeping. I want to do beekeeping. It would be amazing. I would rather not buy sugar.
But every time we look it up, it's like...
so expensive.
So expensive.
And to lose your bees, which does often happen,
a lot.
would be honestly like financially devastating if you were relying upon that for your food.
Like the bee king.
Bee king?
I will never financially recover from this. Get it? I didn't actually watch that show, but that line sticks with me.
Yes. We all want to spin our own wool and weave a serape. Serape? Serape.
Whatever.
But don't kid yourself into taking up a hobby and telling yourself it's a prep if you don't have oats and beans.
Yeah.
A list for someone who hasn't prepped anything at all. I would say number 1, water. 10 cases. 5 big jugs. 5 bottles of vodka tabs.
Rainwater catchment.
Well, that comes next.
Sorry.
Now you have the basics. Now you're going to buy beans. Then you're going to buy flour, oats, rice, sugar. Then you're going to put up a motion detector on your driveway.
Yep.
You're going to grab a couple cans of bear spray. And because they're bigger. And because they're legal everywhere. And you're going to get a knife that you like, and you're going to get used to carrying it.
Learn archery. Just get...
Can you not skip ahead?
Sorry, I didn't know I was skipping ahead. I'm sorry.
Then, Band-Aids. You're going to just get a pre-filled basic first aid kit online, and you're going to throw out those stickers that they include and call Band-Aids, and you're going to replace them with real ones. That's it. That's done. Layer 1 of all 4 of those areas, you're done. Then you're just going to repeat those over and over, getting deeper and deeper. Water, beans, bullets, Band-Aids.
Nice.
If you can tick off some food preps on that list up to a certain level and get on to those other 3 categories up to the same level, then move on, right? So if you're looking down this list of 300 things and you've got a whole bunch of that food, just check it all off and then go back and fill in the things that you're missing. You're just going to keep repeating the 4 layers, the 4 areas on a deeper and deeper level until you feel like all your bases are covered, right? So like more water, more shelf-stable food, more home defense and security, more first aid. And eventually, by the time you get up to the end of our list, you've probably got a year's worth of carbs, fats, and proteins. You probably have a ton of just add water pancake mix and spaghetti and canned tuna and peanut butter. And that's when you start looking at precise inventories and filling in your gaps. But at least you have the basics covered.
Yeah. A note on the prepackaged mixes. Try and find the best ones you can. However, there's always going to be preservatives.
Yeah.
The human body can process these things.
Yeah, it's not maybe the way that you want to eat all the time. Yeah. But if it comes to it,
just
you're
relax.
Gonna be okay. Yeah.
It's
worse to be stressed out about it.
Exactly. You will cause yourself far more harm by stressing about things that you think are the way that they should be, as opposed to the chemicals in your food.
Yeah.
It's about survival.
Yeah. Right now, today, with the things the way they are, let's just get the preps as much as we can without leaving any big gaps, and just get what you can afford and get as much of it as you can afford. As you move up in your water and Band-Aid categories, you'll soon get to the point where you're just maintaining your supply. You're just like checking expiration dates, rotating the water, maybe buying an extra set of Berkey filters. They do last a long, long, long time.
They do.
Yeah. And once those are completely ticked off, you can put all your efforts towards more defense and food. It's like the debt snowball, but with preps. It's the
In
prep
reverse,
snowball.
the prep snowball. It really does work like that. And the one thing that I remember that I say all the time, but I haven't said on this podcast yet, is there's something that happens, I don't know how to describe it. When you're prepared,
Things don't happen.
the things don't happen.
It's like bringing your umbrella.
It is. The worst case of being prepared is it gets kind of boring. And that's a pretty bad worst case, or pretty good worst case scenario. To be bored sometimes, but not homeless and not starving, that's okay.
It's all right.
Life you have to have both sides.
And any food that you have in your pantry from last year, you're not going to get it that cheap this year. And so on.
Yep.
Those strawberries that you're going to buy from Thrive this year are going to be twice the price next year at the store.
So if you're worried about things happening, prepare for them.
Yeah.
And
not out of fear, but just out of,
just
this
prepare.
is what I need.
And when you prepare, when you're properly prepared, those bad things, in our experience, they just go away.
Or there's such a little problem, there's such a little blip on your radar that you don't even really notice.
It no longer matters.
Yeah. Like, people around here will lose power for days in a winter storm, and we don't even realize, except for the fact that it's awfully quiet.
Yeah, I mean, I've often tried, like, I wish I could help my neighbors, but there's no way for me to transmit my power to their house.
Like,
that's
you can come and have a hot shower and charge your cell phone, but I can't make you prepare.
I can't run your fridge.
But we're going to make you guys prepare instead. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks for listening, everybody. We're actually going to wrap up almost on time today.
Nice.
If you want our suggested list of the first 300 things to prep, go to offgridprepfamily.com, and right there on the front page, it'll ask you if you want to download it.
Pop-up.
It's pop-up.
Sorry.
We're just really trying to help you guys reduce decision fatigue and get a whole lot of supplies squared away quickly. Yeah,
this list is based on years, decades, in fact, of experience.
And restarting, moving, starting again.
Yeah.
If you would share this podcast with a friend, we would really appreciate it. It really helps us get the word out and grow our audience. And give us a 5-star review. We haven't had a bunch of reviews yet, and I love them. I love it when we get them. Thank you so much. Be sure to follow us on Instagram and see what we're up to. And today we're going to leave you with this awesome quote that I heard on the Nourishing Traditions podcast, or it's called Wise Traditions. It was on episode 375 just the other day, setting up a local food buying club. And he talks about the difficulties in finding producers who will sell you food that's raised on pasture and grass and non-GMO and no spray. This is by John Moody.
Which one? Oh, it's amazing. In certain parts of the farming community. Oh, I love this quote. Oh my gosh. The reticence to consider they've been misled about what's necessary and what's possible. It really is. I could do a whole PowerPoint deck.
Yeah,
about to my neighbor who farms soybeans
and trying to convince them to just grow food.
And they'd never listen.
Yes, so John Moody, food grower, researcher, author, and Wise Traditions podcast guest.
Philosopher, I suppose. I'm not familiar with John Moody, but
I would totally recommend that episode if you're looking for something to listen to next. Thanks, everybody. Have a nice night.
See ya.
Bye.